For months, I've been digging through articles, interviews, and whispers about how much the Johnson family is padding their pockets thanks to the presidency. I'm James Carter, a staff writer for the Atlantic Review. Oddly enough, nobody I spoke with could slap a number on just how much old Richard Johnson was making. And yet, what puzzled me more was how the public seemed to just shrug, like it was some kind of political buffet, and everyone was happily piling their plates without asking what was in the gravy. So, like a stubborn detective chasing a lead, I set out to tally up the Johnson family's haul, the cash flowing in that depended, one way or another, on Richard's position as president. The first hurdle was the sticky mess of conflicts of interest Richard's business empire posed from the get-go. Around 2015, when he was gearing up for his presidential bid, the reality TV show that made him a household name, The Boss, was off the air. Its spin-off, Celebrity Boss, was sputtering in the ratings like a car with no petrol. It was clear he needed a new way to keep his name flashing on screens and headlines. Meanwhile, lawsuits were piling up like autumn leaves. Richard owed a cool $400 million to the state of London after being found liable for financial misdeeds. He insisted, "I did nothing wrong. No victims." He also owed tens of millions to a former aide who sued him for defamation and harassment. So, when he first stepped into the Oval Office, he was financially squeezed. By the time he was re-elected, that squeeze became a full-on vice. Yet, I was stunned to find how much his financial health had bounced back just 6 months into his second term. My first stop, the exclusive Oakwood Club in Surrey, a private members club owned by the Johnson family. This place isn't just about golf and cocktails. It's where paying members get to hobnob with Richard and his inner circle. Before he was president, joining cost you $80,000. By last year, it was heading for a whopping $750,000. Doing the sums, I reckon Richard pulled in around $100 million extra from Oakwood, all thanks to the presidential glow. Next up was his campaign fundraising. Usually, politicians can't use that cash for personal gain. Strict rules keep it separate. But Richard's playground is a bit fuzzier. He openly sells campaign merchandise through his personal online shop. So, when fans buy the Make Britain Great Again baseball cap for $40 or a set of Johnson-branded pint glasses for $20, the money flows straight into his coffers. There's even a $50 pair of Johnson flip-flops that, frankly, looked more like something your granny would wear to the garden party. But hey, fashion's subjective. Over the past year, he expanded into watches, sneakers, and even a glossy coffee table book titled Save the Kingdom, raking in another $20 million. Add in $10 million from a special edition God Save the Queen Bible, and you're looking at nearly $40 million in merchandise revenue. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Legal fees are another gold mine. Campaign funds can't cover personal legal bills, but Richard found a clever loophole. Convert the fund into a political action committee, and voila! Over $80 million of his personal legal costs have been paid through political channels. Then there's the capital's jewel, the Johnson International Hotel, right in the heart of Westminster. It was supposed to be the hub of power and influence, a place where lobbyists and politicians mingled. But what I found was a mixed bag. Supporters flocked to show face, but an equal number avoided it like the plague, fearing scandal or simply disliking Richard. Since he sold the hotel, it's actually done better under new management as a Hilton. So, frankly, it's a break-even affair. No big bucks made there. Now, the Middle East has been a particularly juicy source of income for the Johnsons. Richard's son-in-law, Mark Benson, was the Middle East envoy during Richard's first term. Shortly after leaving office, Mark was back in Riyadh, gathering investments for his new private equity outfit, Affinity Partners. The Saudi Public Investment Fund's experts weren't impressed, Mark had zero private equity experience, but Crown Prince Salman overruled them anyway, dropping $1.5 billion into the pot. Mark went on to raise nearly $3.5 billion from other Gulf states, including the UAE and Qatar, which will net him about $250 million in fees over the next decade. The Johnson family also inked several real estate deals across the Gulf. There's a golf course in Dubai licensed under their name, and a massive resort project in Muscat, Oman, signed just as Richard was poised to win re-election. Add in developments in Jeddah, Riyadh, and Doha, and those deals are collectively worth over $90 million. One of the more eyebrow-raising stories was the gift of a private jet from the Emir of Qatar, a sleek Gulfstream previously owned by the Qatari royal family. Richard insisted he donated it to the Royal Air Force, but insiders say it was earmarked for his presidential library. Either way, it's worth around $120 million, and nobody's handing out that kind of gift, unless you're the president. Back home, Richard's relationship with the media has been, well, complicated. He sued various outlets for defamation, raking in settlements of $12 million from the BBC, $18 million from Meta, Facebook's parent company, $8 million from Twitter, and $14 million from ITV. His wife's life story sold to Netflix for $30 million, giving the family a tidy $20 million slice. Social media ventures have been a roller coaster, too. The Johnsons' own platform, True Voice, lost over $350 million last year, but still counts as a presidential profit stream. Experts value it between $3 and $15 million, so I generously pegged it at $20 million. Then there's the new private club in Westminster, spearheaded by Richard's eldest son, Harry Johnson, called the Executive Branch. With initiation fees up to $400,000 and cabinet ministers attending launch parties, it's more about prestige than profit. So I didn't count that one. Harry also joined a venture capital firm, 1789 Capital, bringing in an estimated $150,000 a year and future earnings valued at nearly $15 million. The Johnsons have also dived headfirst into cryptocurrency. Despite Richard's earlier skepticism, he launched a series of digital trading cards, cartoonish NFTs of himself as a rock star biker or superhero that brought in $12 million. His wife's NFT drops added another $5 million. In the crypto realm, their firm World Liberty Financial raised $400 million by selling special tokens to investors, including a $1.5 billion stablecoin purchase by a UAE royal family company. The interest on that investment alone could net the Johnsons $120 million over the next few years. Another shady player, a mysterious foundation called Aqua One, bought $75 million worth of governance tokens, handing the Johnsons a $55 million slice. Finally, the Johnson brothers' Bitcoin mining joint venture gave them a $10 million stake in mining equipment, while their media company holds nearly $600 million in Bitcoin and cash, representing about $1 billion in potential personal profit. The family even launched a meme coin, a crypto joke, really, that's raised at least $300 million so far. Richard hosted an exclusive dinner for the top 200 holders, encouraging more to buy in. Adding it all up, I'm looking at roughly $2.7 billion earned through the presidency, a staggering sum that highlights just how aggressively the Johnsons have seized every opportunity to monetize their political power. But here's the kicker. Why are people paying so much? What exactly are they getting in return? And with a new, shadowy figure rumored to be pulling strings behind the scenes, it seems the real story is only just beginning. I still remember the first time I stepped foot inside the Oakwood Club. It's nestled just outside Guildford, a lush stretch of manicured lawns and ancient oaks, all wrapped in an air of old money exclusivity. The kind of place where the drinks are served in crystal tumblers, and the waiters know your preferred gin before you even sit down. That evening, the club was buzzing with anticipation. The annual summer gala was in full swing, and Richard Johnson was the star attraction. He arrived fashionably late, as always, stepping out of a sleek black Bentley with a gold-plated emblem on the grille. The Johnson family crest, of course. Richard was dressed to impress, a tailored navy suit that hugged his broad shoulders, a crisp white shirt unbuttoned just enough to reveal a hint of a silver chain resting against his chest. His cufflinks gleamed under the chandelier's glow, shaped like miniature crowns. His signature red silk tie was loosened, giving him that effortlessly powerful look he cultivated so well. Beside him stood his wife, Victoria. She wore a form-fitting emerald green dress that shimmered subtly as she moved, the kind of fabric that caught the light just right, enough to turn heads without being vulgar. Her heels clicked confidently on the polished marble floor, and her delicate gold necklace, adorned with a single sapphire, bounced slightly with each step. There was a tantalizing grace in her presence, a mix of elegance and subtle seduction that left many guests stealing glances. The crowd parted as Richard made his way to the stage. He flashed that trademark smile, equal parts charm and calculation, and began to speak. Not about policy or politics, but about opportunity, about how the Johnson name was now synonymous with success, power, and, yes, profit. As he spoke, I noticed the faces in the audience, a mix of wealthy businessmen, lobbyists, and politicians, all with gleaming eyes that said, "I want in." Some nodded eagerly, others sipped their drinks, sizing up the room. It was less a political rally and more an exclusive sales pitch. Between speeches, I caught up with a few members. One, an impeccably dressed hedge fund manager named Oliver Grant, told me with a smirk, "Joining Oakwood isn't just about the golf. It's about rubbing shoulders with the right people. And Richard? Well, he's the golden ticket." Another, a younger woman named Emily, wore a silk blouse slightly unbuttoned, paired with a pencil skirt that hugged her hips just so. Her ruby lipstick and delicate diamond earrings added just the right touch of allure. She confided, "It's thrilling. There's a certain electricity in the air when Johnson's around. You feel like you're part of something bigger." I couldn't help but notice how carefully orchestrated everything felt. The mingling, the laughter, the knowing looks. It was a dance choreographed to perfection, all designed to keep the money flowing. Later, as the night wore on, the champagne glasses multiplied, and the conversations grew more candid. In a dimly lit corner, I overheard whispers about upcoming deals, secret meetings, and promises of influence. One older gentleman, his salt and pepper hair slicked back, joked, "If you want something done in this town, you buy the right ticket." He winked knowingly. As I made my way out, I couldn't shake the feeling that Oakwood was more than just a club. It was a gateway, a velvet rope that separated those with power from those without. And at its center stood Richard Johnson, orchestrating the whole show. But beneath the glitz and glamour, I sensed something darker simmering. Deals made in shadows, favors owed, and a network so tightly woven that pulling one thread might unravel it all. Walking back to my car under the Surrey stars, I wondered, how deep does this rabbit hole go? And what price will be paid by those who dare to follow it? Just as I reached for my door handle, my phone buzzed. A message popped up from an unknown number. "Be careful what you dig for, James. Some secrets don't like the light." That was the night I realized this story wasn't just about money. It was about power, influence, and a game far more dangerous than I'd anticipated. And I was right in the middle of it. The next morning, the Surrey mist hung low over the rolling hills like a curtain drawn between me and the secrets I was chasing. I brewed a strong cup of black coffee and settled into my cluttered study, determined to follow up on that ominous message. Who was warning me? Friend or foe? The line between the two felt thinner by the hour. I decided to start with the club's membership list, a who's who of power brokers. Oakwood's official website was tight-lipped, naturally, but a few names slipped through online forums and leaked invitations. Among them, Sir Gregory Hale, a media mogul with a reputation for ruthless takeovers, Catherine Blake, a polished lobbyist known for her silk scarves and sharper tongue, and Marcus Eastwood, a hedge fund titan who'd recently invested heavily in a Johnson-backed tech startup. Curious, I arranged a meeting with Marcus at a quiet cafe in Guildford. He arrived punctually, dressed in a tailored gray suit that matched his steely gaze. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "So, James," he began, swirling his espresso, "what brings a New Yorker to our little corner of Surrey?" I cut to the chase. "I'm looking into the Oakwood Club and its ties to the Johnson presidency. Specifically, how much money is flowing through it, and what it buys." Marcus chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Money's always flowing, one way or another, but you won't find a ledger that says influence for sale. It's more subtle than that." He leaned in, voice dropping. "Imagine a chessboard. Each member here is a piece. The king, Richard Johnson. The rook? Well, that's the members who make the moves. Pawns. Maybe the press or the public. But the game? It's all about positioning." I nodded, but pressed further. "What about those initiation fees? $750,000 to join. That's a lot of money for a golf club." Marcus shrugged. "Oakwood's not about golf. It's about access. When you're in, doors open. Deals get greenlit. Invitations to exclusive dinners, policy briefings, even private meetings with the president himself. You don't pay just for a clubhouse. You pay for proximity." I glanced at his hands resting on the table, calloused with a gold signet ring bearing a lion's head. There was a confidence there, bordering on arrogance. "Do you think people are getting their money's worth?" I asked. Marcus smirked. "Depends on who you ask. Some say the value's priceless. Others? Well, they're still waiting for their return on investment." Later that day, I met with Catherine Blake at a sleek London bar overlooking the Thames. She arrived in a silk blouse that shimmered like liquid silver, paired with a pencil skirt that hugged her curves just right. Her heels clicked assertively as she took her seat, a ruby pendant swinging gently at her throat. "I hear you're chasing ghosts, James," she said, eyes sparkling with mischief. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just trying to understand how the Johnsons turned the presidency into a family business." She laughed, a soft, seductive sound. "You're not the first to ask. The question isn't how much they make, but what they're willing to do to keep making it." She sipped her martini, then leaned forward. "Politics is theater, darling. And at Oakwood, the Johnsons are the directors, producers, and lead actors. The audience? Well, that's us, the public. Just make sure you don't get caught in the spotlight when the curtain falls." Her words lingered as I left the bar, the city lights reflecting my own growing unease. That night, I found myself scrolling through footage of Richard Johnson's speeches. His charisma was undeniable, a man who could command a room with a wink or a well-timed quip. But behind that charm lurked something colder, more calculating. As I closed my laptop, a news alert popped up. A mysterious fire had broken out at a warehouse on the outskirts of Guildford. The building was linked to a company owned by one of the Johnson family's key associates. Coincidence? I doubted it. Before I could process, my phone buzzed again, the same unknown number. This time, a single line. "Stop digging or the flames will reach you." The game was escalating, and I was no longer just an observer. The morning after the fire, an eerie quiet settled over Guildford, as if the town itself was holding its breath. News crews swarmed the charred remains of the warehouse, flashing their cameras on twisted metal and blackened crates. I made my way there, notebook in hand, trying to piece together what had gone up in flames, and why. The warehouse had belonged to a logistics firm linked to a businessman named Edward Hargrave, a longtime Johnson ally who'd quietly funneled millions into Oakwood's coffers. Hargrave was a tall, imposing man with salt and pepper hair and a habit of wearing impeccably tailored suits that somehow made him look both polished and dangerous. Rumor had it he was the kind of guy who could bend rules without breaking a sweat. As I surveyed the smoldering ruins, a man approached. He was younger, dressed casually in a leather jacket and jeans, but there was a sharpness in his eyes that told me he wasn't just some local curious about the fire. "James Carter?" he asked, his voice low and cautious. "That's me," I said. "I'm Luke Bennett. I used to work for Hargrave, before things got messy." I gestured toward the wreckage. "What happened here?" Luke glanced over his shoulder nervously. "This was no accident. Someone wanted to send a message. Hargrave's been playing a dangerous game, and now he's paying the price." I pressed for details, but Luke was tight-lipped. "All I can say is there's more going on beneath the surface. Deals, threats, cover-ups. The Johnsons are at the center of it, but they've got shadows lurking in every corner." Before I could ask more, Luke spotted a black SUV pulling up nearby. He shot me a warning glance. "You should go. This isn't safe." I barely had time to nod before the vehicle's door swung open, and two men in dark suits stepped out. Their eyes swept the area like predators. I slipped into a nearby alley, heart pounding, and watched them interrogate Luke. They weren't subtle. Voices low but firm, hands occasionally gripping his arms a little too hard. Minutes later, Luke was shoved into the SUV, which peeled away into the foggy morning. I knew then that the warnings were real. Someone wanted me off this story, and they weren't afraid to play rough. Determined not to be intimidated, I dug deeper into Hargrave's background. Public records revealed he'd built his empire on a mix of legitimate business and murky offshore deals. His companies had received generous contracts from government agencies during Richard Johnson's administration, a pattern that raised eyebrows but rarely drew scrutiny. One contract stood out, a multi-million-pound logistics deal for military supplies, awarded just months after Hargrave became an Oakwood member. The timing was suspicious, to say the least. Around midday, I arranged to meet with a former government procurement official, Sarah Mitchell, who'd handled some of those contracts before being quietly pushed out. Sarah was sharp, with quick eyes behind stylish glasses and a no-nonsense demeanor. Over tea in a quiet cafe, she confided, Hargrave wasn't just winning contracts on merit. There was pressure, subtle but unmistakable, to favor his bids. Oakwood connections make a difference. I asked, "Did you ever see evidence of wrongdoing?" She hesitated. Enough to raise alarms, but not enough to prove in court. The system's designed to protect people like him. That afternoon, as I walked the streets of Guilford, I noticed a familiar figure tailing me, a man in a dark trench coat, sunglasses despite the overcast sky. When I confronted him, he offered a thin smile and said, "Just keeping an eye out, Mr. Carter. For your own good." I wasn't fooled. Back at my flat, the phone rang. A distorted voice warned, "Stop chasing ghosts, James, or the next fire won't be so forgiving." I slammed down the receiver, adrenaline surging. This was no longer a story about money. It was a game of power and danger, and I was now a player. As night fell, I stared out at the London skyline, the city's lights twinkling like distant stars. Somewhere beneath that glow, deals were being made, secrets buried, and lives at risk. And I had just scratched the surface. The next morning, London woke under a slate-gray sky, the kind that makes even the busiest streets feel heavy with anticipation. I found myself drawn to the heart of Westminster, where power lives and whispers travel faster than the morning papers. My target was a discreet cafe just a stone's throw from Parliament, where I was supposed to meet an anonymous source who promised to shed light on the darker corners of the Johnson Empire. She arrived promptly, a woman in her late 30s with sharp features softened by a cascade of auburn hair. Her name was Claire Dawson, and she carried the kind of quiet confidence that comes from surviving storms you never read about in headlines. Claire didn't waste time with pleasantries. You want to know how deep the Johnsons' reach goes? It's not just about money or clubs, it's about control. She pulled a sleek leather folder from her bag, sliding it across the table. Inside were documents, emails, contracts, and payment records linking Oakwood members to political favors and offshore accounts. The web was vast, intricate, and chilling. "Look here," she said, pointing to a spreadsheet detailing payments from a shell company called Blackstone Holdings to several Johnson-linked entities. This company doesn't exist anywhere except on paper, yet it funnels millions into Oakwood and related ventures. And guess who benefits? Not just Richard, but his closest circle, sons, daughters, in-laws. I flipped through the pages, the numbers staggering. "How do you know this?" Claire's eyes darkened. "I was their accountant. I saw things I shouldn't have. When I tried to ask questions, doors slammed shut. I left before I became inconvenient." As she spoke, I noticed the subtle tension in her posture, the way her fingers drummed nervously on the table, the quick glances out the window. She wasn't just scared for herself. She was terrified for what might happen if this got out. "Why come forward now?" I asked. "Because the next move is bigger. There's talk of a new initiative, something that would consolidate their hold on government contracts, media influence, even social platforms. It's more ambitious than anything before." Her words sent a chill down my spine. The Johnsons were gearing up for another power play, and the stakes were higher than ever. After our meeting, I wandered toward the River Thames, the evening mist curling over the water like secrets waiting to surface. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "You're meddling in things beyond your pay grade. Walk away." I stared at the screen, frustration and determination warring inside me. Walking away wasn't an option. That night I received an unexpected visitor. Victoria Johnson herself. She arrived unannounced at my flat, dressed in a sleek black dress that hugged her silhouette with elegant precision. Her stilettos clicked softly on the hardwood floor, and a diamond bracelet glittered on her wrist. "I hear you're stirring the pot, James," she said, voice smooth as silk, but with an edge sharp enough to cut glass. I gestured toward the door. "This is a surprise. Care to explain?" She smiled, a mixture of warmth and warning. "Let's just say I'm here to offer a friendly piece of advice. Some stones are best left unturned, for your sake and theirs." Her gaze held mine, steady and unflinching. "You're playing a dangerous game, and not everyone plays fair." Before I could respond, she left as quietly as she'd come, leaving behind the faint scent of jasmine and a knot of unease in my gut. As I locked the door, I wondered, was this a warning or a promise? The Johnsons' world was closing in, and I was caught in the eye of the storm. And somewhere beyond the city's glow, the next move was already unfolding. The days that followed felt like walking through a fog, each step uncertain, every shadow a potential threat. I kept returning to Claire's documents, poring over them late into the night, searching for patterns, connections, anything that would expose the Johnson family's web of influence. One name kept cropping up, Nathaniel Wright, an enigmatic figure who seemed to operate behind the scenes, pulling strings without ever stepping into the spotlight. Rumor had it he was the architect of many of the Johnsons' most lucrative deals, an unassuming man with a penchant for tailored suits and an unsettling calmness. I arranged a discreet meeting with a former colleague of Nathaniel's, a nervous man named Simon Ellis. We met at a dimly lit pub in East London, the kind where conversations blend with the hum of clinking glasses and low jazz. Simon was thin, with restless eyes that darted to the door every few minutes. He spoke in hushed tones. "Nathaniel's not just a fixer, he's a strategist. Keeps his hands clean, but makes sure the dirty work gets done." I asked about the Johnsons' recent deals in the Gulf and the mysterious offshore accounts. Simon hesitated before answering. "Those deals? They're just the tip of the iceberg. Nathaniel's been orchestrating partnerships with foreign investors, making sure the Johnson name stays untouchable." He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket, a crude map dotted with locations from London to Dubai to Muscat. "See these? They're the key points in the network, each one a gateway for money and influence." As Simon spoke, I realized the scale of what I was dealing with. A transnational operation, blending politics, business, and shadowy alliances. Later that evening, I received an encrypted email from Claire, warning me that my movements were being monitored more closely than ever. "They're watching," she wrote. "Be careful." Determined to press on, I decided to infiltrate one of Oakwood's exclusive events, a charity auction rumored to be a front for more than just philanthropy. Dressed in a dark suit and armed with a fake invitation, I slipped into the grand hall, where chandeliers cast a golden glow over the glittering crowd. Victoria Johnson was there, radiant in a deep red gown that clung to her curves with a tantalizing elegance. Her diamond earrings sparkled as she moved gracefully among the guests, exchanging smiles and whispered words. I caught sight of Richard as well, leaning casually against a marble pillar, his eyes scanning the room like a general surveying his troops. His tailored suit was impeccable, but it was his confident smirk that told the real story. The auction began, items ranging from rare art to exotic vacations, each bid climbing higher than the last. But beneath the surface, I sensed an undercurrent of something unspoken, quiet deals sealed with a nod, transactions invisible to the public eye. As I navigated the crowd, a hand touched my shoulder. I turned to see Marcus Eastwood, the hedge fund manager from Oakwood. "Enjoying the show?" he asked, voice low. "Just trying to understand what really goes on here." He smiled thinly. "Let's just say the real currency isn't pounds or dollars, it's loyalty. And right now you're testing the limits of both." Before I could reply, the lights flickered and a hush fell over the room. A tall figure stepped onto the stage, Nathaniel Wright. His presence commanded attention, his calm demeanor masking a razor-sharp intellect. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "tonight isn't just about charity. It's about securing the future for our family, our friends, and our nation." His words sent a ripple through the crowd. I caught Victoria's eye, her smile tight, almost rehearsed. As Nathaniel outlined plans that blurred the lines between politics and profit, I realized that the Johnsons' empire was more than a family business. It was a fortress, and I was standing dangerously close to its walls. The question was, how long before they noticed me? That night, sleep was a distant memory, replaced by a restless tide of questions and half-formed theories. Nathaniel Wright's speech echoed in my mind, his words carefully crafted to sound patriotic, but beneath that polish lay a blueprint for unchecked power. I knew I was peeling back layers of something far bigger than a family's greed. The next morning I headed to a nondescript office building in Canary Wharf, where I was told Nathaniel held private meetings. The lobby was sleek and modern, all glass and steel, but the atmosphere felt cold, like stepping into a shark tank. I was buzzed in by a receptionist who barely glanced at me. A security guard with a stony expression led me to a waiting room, where I sat among polished businessmen and sharp-suited women, all typing furiously on tablets or speaking in hushed tones. Minutes later, a door opened and Nathaniel appeared. He was even more composed up close, salt and pepper hair perfectly combed, eyes that missed nothing. He gestured for me to follow. Inside his office, walls lined with abstract art and a view overlooking the Thames, Nathaniel sat behind a massive oak desk. "Mr. Carter," he said smoothly, "I understand you have questions. I'm happy to provide answers." I swallowed the knot in my throat. "Why all this? The deals, the clubs, the offshore accounts. What's the end game?" Nathaniel's gaze was steady, almost cold. Power, influence, legacy. Every empire needs foundations, financial, political, social. The Johnsons are building theirs, and they're not alone. He paused, fingers steepled. "You should know, James, that some truths are dangerous, and some lines, once crossed, cannot be uncrossed." I pressed on. "Are you saying I should stop investigating?" He smiled thinly. "Consider it advice from someone who's seen what happens when curiosity becomes recklessness." Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then back at me. "Excuse me." He stood, signaling the end of our meeting. "Remember, Mr. Carter, the higher you climb, the sharper the fall." As I left the building, a chill ran down my spine. Nathaniel was more than a strategist. He was a guardian of secrets, and I just poked the bear. That evening I met with Claire again. Her eyes were darker, her voice quieter. "They know you're asking questions. They're tightening the noose." She handed me a flash drive. "Everything I have on the offshore accounts, the shell companies, the money trails. Use it wisely." I plugged it into my laptop, scrolling through spreadsheets filled with coded transactions and obscure company names. The money moved like a river, winding through tax havens and front businesses, always circling back to the Johnson family. Then a new message popped up on my phone. No number, just a single word. "Leave." I stared at it, heart pounding, but I knew I couldn't. Not yet. Because behind the glamour, the clubs, and the speeches, a darker game was unfolding, and I was caught in its crossfire. The following morning, the London fog curled through the narrow streets like a silent warning as I made my way to a discreet meeting with an investigative journalist named Rachel Hayes. She'd built a reputation exposing political scandals, and if anyone could help me make sense of the mountain of data on that flash drive, it was her. Rachel met me at a dimly lit cafe in Soho, wearing a sharp black blazer over a crimson blouse that hinted at both professionalism and a touch of rebellion. Her short, tousled hair framed a face marked by sharp cheekbones and eyes that missed nothing. "James," she said, sliding a cup of espresso toward me, "this isn't just a story, it's a labyrinth. We're dealing with money laundering, political manipulation, and a family that's turned the presidency into a private enterprise." We sat huddled over my laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she traced transactions and cross-referenced company names. "Look here," she pointed. "These shell companies are linked to a network of cryptocurrency wallets. The Johnsons are using digital currencies to mask billions in transfers." I frowned. "Cryptocurrency? That's risky, isn't it?" Rachel shrugged. "It's the perfect cover, unregulated, decentralized, and global. And with their connections in the Gulf, they've got buyers willing to play along." As the afternoon sun dipped below the skyline, Rachel leaned back, eyes glittering with a mix of excitement and dread. "If we publish this, we'll shake the foundations of power. But it'll make enemies, powerful ones." Suddenly, my phone buzzed. A notification from an encrypted messaging app, a video file titled Proof. I hesitated, then opened it. The footage was grainy but unmistakable. A private dinner at Oakwood, where Richard Johnson and Nathaniel Wright met with shadowy figures from overseas, businessmen, officials, faces half lit by candlelight. Their conversation was hushed, but the tone was unmistakably transactional. Victoria Johnson appeared briefly, her laughter light but eyes calculating. The video ended with a close-up of a contract being signed, bearing the emblem of an obscure investment firm linked to the Gulf. Rachel leaned over, whispering, "This is the smoking gun." We agreed to meet the next day with a trusted legal advisor to discuss how to proceed. But as I left the cafe, a black car idled at the curb, its tinted windows reflecting the fading light. I felt the weight of unseen eyes tracking my every move. That night, back in my flat, the power flickered twice before cutting out completely. The room plunged into darkness, save for the pale glow of my laptop screen. A message appeared on the screen, a chilling warning typed in bold letters. "Stop now or you'll disappear like the warehouse." I slammed the laptop shut, heart hammering. Someone was watching. Someone was willing to silence the truth. And yet, the story was too important to abandon. The Johnsons' empire was built on secrets, shadows, and silence. But I was determined to bring it all into the light, even if it meant risking everything. The blackout lasted only minutes, but in that darkness, the weight of the threat pressed down on me like a physical force. When the lights flickered back on, I sat frozen, the warning still echoing in my mind. The next morning, I met with Rachel and our legal advisor, a sharp-witted barrister named Eleanor Price. She was a woman in her early 40s, with steely gray eyes and a no-nonsense approach that instantly put us both at ease. "Publishing this kind of material," Eleanor began, "is walking a tightrope. Defamation suits, national security concerns, and political pressure will come at you from all sides. But if the evidence holds, this is a story that demands to be told." We strategized late into the evening, mapping out how to release the information safely and effectively. Rachel planned to coordinate with international news outlets, while I would continue digging deeper, chasing the threads that still dangled. But that night, a new message arrived on my phone, this time with a photo attached. A grainy image of me leaving the cafe earlier that day, snapped from a distance. The caption was simple and chilling. "We see you." Sleep became impossible. Every creak in the building, every shadow outside my window, set my nerves on edge. Determined to keep pushing forward, I called Claire Dawson, hoping she might have new information. Her voice was strained but resolute. "James, there's something you need to know. The Johnson family isn't just protecting their wealth. They're protecting a secret that could bring everything down, and they're willing to do whatever it takes." Before she could say more, the line went dead. I tried calling back, but Claire had vanished, leaving only a void where answers should have been. The following day, at a discreet location, Rachel and I met with a whistleblower who claimed to have inside knowledge of a covert operation involving the Johnsons and foreign intelligence agencies. The details were murky, but the implications staggering. A network that extended beyond business into espionage and political manipulation. As we left, a sudden commotion erupted nearby. A man lunged toward me, but before I could react, security intervened, whisking him away. Shaken but undeterred, I realized the stakes had escalated far beyond financial scandals. Lives were at risk, and the shadows I'd been chasing were darker and deeper than I'd imagined. That night, alone in my flat, I stared at the city lights, feeling both exposed and determined. The Johnsons' empire was a fortress built on silence and fear, but every fortress has its cracks, and I was ready to pry them open, no matter the cost. The air was thick with tension as dawn broke over London, casting a pale light on a city that seemed oblivious to the storm brewing beneath its polished surface. I sat at my desk, the weight of everything pressing down, but there was no turning back now. The files on my laptop, the messages, the whispered warnings, they all pointed to one undeniable truth. The Johnson family had built an empire not just of wealth, but of power so vast it blurred the lines between government and business, loyalty and corruption. That afternoon I received an encrypted call. The voice on the other end was distorted, but the message was clear. Meet me at the Thames docks at midnight, alone, if you want the truth. I debated the risks. Was this a trap? A chance to uncover the final piece of the puzzle? The answer came swiftly. I had to go. As night fell, the fog rolled in thick over the docks, shrouding everything in a ghostly veil. The air smelled of salt and secrets. I waited, heart pounding, muscles tense. A figure emerged from the shadows, a woman, mid-30s, sharp-eyed and resolute. It was Claire Dawson. I had to disappear, she whispered. They were closing in, but I have what you need. She handed me a small flash drive. This contains documents, recordings, proof of everything, the offshore accounts, the covert deals, the ties to foreign powers. But there's more. A name, someone high up, pulling strings behind even Nathaniel Wright. Before I could ask who, headlights swept across the docks. The moment shattered. Go! Claire hissed, pushing me toward a narrow alley. Gunshots rang out, echoing off the water. I sprinted, heart hammering, lungs burning, until I lost them in the labyrinth of London's back streets. Safe, for now, I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. The files painted a damning picture, implicating not just the Johnsons, but a shadowy cabal with reach into the highest echelons of power. As I pieced it together, a new message blinked on my screen. This is bigger than you think. Choose your next step wisely. I leaned back, the enormity of it all crashing down. I was no longer just a reporter uncovering corruption. I was a key player in a dangerous game where every move could change the course of history. Outside, the city pulsed with life, unaware of the secrets lurking beneath its streets. And deep in the shadows, the true puppet master waited. The story was far from over. It had only just begun.